Karen Spencer is a master NLP coach that specializes in helping anyone struggling with anxiety, depression, or trauma. Using her proven results-based formula that involves a number of leading-edge modalities, Karen has successfully helped dozens of people achieve a more peaceful and a joy-filled life, which is really important. Again, we're going to dive a little bit more into that tonight, and I think that's a very important topic. Karen's unique coaching skills allow results to be achieved in as little as 3 to 4 months, allowing people to enjoy their desired life sooner than later, and that's very important as well. Karen is compassionate and understanding and has been recognized with the NLP coaching community as a leader in having exceptional talent and skills. We have one of the best in our midst tonight. I'm excited to hear from you. All right, Karen, now we would like to really dive into the unconscious mind. So I understand that your method of coaching involves dealing with the unconscious mind. Can you really explain to us what that really is and really what you mean by that?
Yes, certainly. So are you all aware that you have an unconscious mind? And I hope you do. And so what I like to say to people that our unconscious mind is just the part of ourselves that we're not aware of on a day-by-day, minute-by-minute basis. So I don't think anyone here is sitting thinking about digesting their supper or their dinner, nor are you sitting and thinking about your liver function and hoping it's going well. But there is that intelligence in you that is doing all of that. And that intelligence is your unconscious mind. But it does so much more. And the part of the unconscious mind that I'm interested in as a therapist that deals with anxiety, depression, trauma, is the part of the unconscious mind that stores all of the memory. So you may sit here and tell me, I can't remember my second birthday. Consciously, you probably can't. Unconsciously, it's all there. Everything that was ever said to you, everything that you ever said, every experience you ever had is stored in that holographic library we call our unconscious mind. And all the memories and all the emotions that go with it are stored there as well. So it is a great holographic memory working for us. But what's also important is that it does all our thinking, or most of our thinking. All of our thinking we do 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and most of them are generated out of our unconscious mind. So we think we're conscious beings, we're in control of our life, we're making good decisions, we're eyes open, moving forward, when really it's our unconscious mind that's running us, because we are just showing up as the habits, behaviors, memories, beliefs that we imprinted upon ourselves, or God imprinted upon ourselves when we were children. So the good news here is that you can do a lot of conscious, really great things. You can consciously decide to exercise. You can consciously decide to eat well. You can consciously decide to do affirmations and meditate. And those are all wonderful. And when you combine that with unconscious work that's easy and effective, you can achieve change that's remarkable, quick, and everlasting. Because that's where 95% of us live.
I'm really interested in learning more about that. You've hooked me. All right, Karen. So now that we really understand what the unconscious mind is, and it's really interesting because all of the practitioners here have sort of touched on the unconscious mind and how powerful that is, can you explain why it's important to address it when aiming to achieve optimal physical and emotional health?
Yes. So we show up reflecting what we're thinking about. And so our thoughts are really driving everything that's going on in our life. And so how do we show up? We show up in our mood. We show up, unfortunately, sometimes in our personality. We certainly show up with physiology, and all these practitioners would deal with that on a daily basis. Our physiology is like this. It typically is our thinking is off. We show up with our level of pain. And we, unfortunately, do show up also with diagnosis and disease, all stemming back to what's going on in our beliefs. What's our thinking? So we have a number of core beliefs that are outside of our awareness, and these core beliefs get set in during our imprint years, and our imprint years are 0 to 7. So during 0 to 7, we go about life completely absorbing. We are living primarily in what we call theta brainwave, and we just accept and we assimilate, and we don't question, and we just accept everything. And during those great years, we also will have experience, sometimes intentional, sometimes non-intentional by others, that imprint upon us a core belief that we want to talk about ourselves, maybe about our safety. Maybe we saw something, heard something, experienced something that now we core belief we're not safe, or we think we're not worthy because something mom said, Or we think that we're not lovable because mom and dad are fighting. Or we think that we have no power because we're the little one in the family and everybody else has got all the power. So what happens is that this core belief is what keeps playing for us all the time now in our unconscious. Like I said before, we have 60 to 70 thoughts per day. 95% of those are outside of awareness. Most of those are repetitive, so they're the same ones you had yesterday and the same ones you had the day before, and you're going to have them tomorrow. And they're fundamentally anchored in these core beliefs. So we show up reflecting those core beliefs. And that's how we lead towards disease. But the good news is that those core beliefs can be changed. So I like to think of the unconscious mind as a tape recorder. You know the old reel-to-reel tape recorders? My brother had one, you know, reel-to-reel. And it just runs constantly, 24/7, all the time. All the time. And on that tape, on that piece of tape, is a bunch of messages that are running. Some of them are really good. We all have them. We're not sitting in jail. We all have fundamentally good messages there saying we have to be honest, we have to be hardworking, we have to show up on time. Great messages. But then there's core other messages that are not healthy for us. Messages about our unworthiness, about our unlovability, about we're not safe, we're not powerful, whatever it is. And what's great is that working with someone like myself, it's very easy to go in and take that piece of tape that's no longer good and splice it out. Say, I don't want that because it's showing up for me today as disease, showing up for me today as bad relationships, it's showing up for me today as ineffective at work. And we can take that piece of tape out and we can insert a piece of tape that says, I am worthy, I am lovable, I am good enough, I am powerful. And then life changes in a way that you cannot imagine. So dealing with our thoughts is how we deal with our health at the very, very beginning.
We all feel negative emotions from time to time. So can you really explain to us how do our negative emotions wreak havoc on our physical health?
Certainly. So we all do feel negative emotions, and if we don't, we're not human. So, stand guard. You should feel negative emotions like anxiety, stress, overwhelm, those types of emotions. And when we do feel them, what is being triggered in us is the fight or flight response, which was put into our survival mechanism way back when in the caveman days. This natural response served us well because it kept us safe. So as soon as that predator was detected, the fight or flight response would turn off unnecessary bodily functions, like let's say digestion, and turn on a lot of really necessary bodily functions, like eyesight got really good, a lot of energy went to the muscles so you could outrun your predator. And away the caveman went, running until he was safe again and went back to his cave and relaxed. The problem with today's society is that we live in chronic stress. We don't have that. Relax. Because what happens for us is that we perceive everything to be a threat. This is the way we are today. Every text that comes in from our boss is now setting us off into anger and maybe stimulating that core belief that we are not appreciated. The phone call from our spouse is maybe setting us off into frustration and really stimulating another core belief that's way back in our unconscious. So the thing is that we are living in chronic stress due to our society. But do you see that it's not the text that's threatening? It's not the phone call that's threatening. Way back in the caveman days, that woolly mammoth was a threat. But these texts aren't threatening. The phone call's not threatening. The email's not threatening. What's threatening is our thought about it. So suffering does not come from our experience. Suffering comes from our thinking about the experience and what the thoughts are that it triggers and it generates. So the good news is that we can move past that. So can you imagine going to work and still getting that text, because you're going to get it. The boss is still going to text you. That is unchangeable. But going and receiving the text and no longer hitting the anger button, but responding appropriately and proportionally to the situation. Or receiving this call from your spouse and no longer feeling frustrated and angry and whatever that stimulates, but again, responding appropriately and proportionally to the situation. That's what comes when we get rid of the thinking that's being generated by the events. And it leads to better health, it leads to better happiness, it leads to better lives, it leads to way less negative emotions. And what happens is that when we live in negativity as much as we do, we are biochemically telling our bodies that we are constantly being chased. And what's happening is that we are down-regulating our gene expression over time. You do this long enough, years, decades, And then that definitely leads, unfortunately, into diagnosis of disease and some maybe disability. So it's very important to get our handle on our negative emotions, and it's more than just thinking positive affirmations. It is about getting rid of the thinking that's going on in the background that's causing this to automatically trigger. And the good news is that it can be done easily and effectively and painlessly.
Karen, so back to you for a little bit. From your perspective as a coach, how does a person's past play a role in their current health?
So a lot of people, unfortunately, have had a negative past experience, some greater than others, and it has emotionally branded them. And what happens is that now when they get a similar experience in current day, they go right back, and it triggers them right back to that past experience, and they can't really get past it. And what I like to call it is that they live in the vibration of that past experience. And if you can't get past that vibration, then you're constantly reliving the experience over and over and over again. And then it becomes your label. And this is what I see so often in my practice. People come in with a label. I am whatever, or I have whatever, or I suffer from whatever, and that becomes their label. But what happens is that if we don't get past the negative past experience, then I can tell you what your future will look like. It's going to be more experiences that repeat and lead you to feel very familiar to that past negative experience. So if you want to have change, you want to get past this, and it is, you can get past it. I deal with trauma all the time. I deal with PTSD all the time. Some significant experiences that are really quite catastrophic. And it doesn't mean the person forgets it or it's not there. It is there, but the vibration around it, what it triggers in them today is completely different. And I've even witnessed people taking that experience and making it into gold, turning that experience into a learning, into something that they can take forward and tell others about, take forward and levitate their life with. So if you are suffering with any kind of past trauma, then you are definitely a victim, but you don't have to stay a victim, which is the good news, and you can move past it and you can get that vibration out of your body so the next time you experience a similar experience, something that reminds you, it can be totally different. And then you can see how your health is better because you're no longer living in those negative emotions that we know over time downregulate your health through constantly living in those negative chemicals.
So Karen, how does the thinking and feeling loop get stored as energy in the body, and how can that be overcome?
Right. So let me just explain the thinking, feeling loop. So do you ever feel like you're kind of stuck and you can't get out of an emotion? It's always there. Well, it's because there is a looping going on. So one important piece of information I want you all to hear is that you can't feel a feeling or feel an emotion without a preceding thought. So emotions don't just show up out of the blue and appear. There's a thought that preceded it. And what the loop is that we'll have a thought, and when we have a thought in our neurology, it's a connection that is connected with a chemical. That's how the thoughts happen. And if it's a negative thought, it's a negative chemical that's generating, that is connecting that. And it is this negative chemical then floods our body. And now we're living in the negative chemical of the thinking of maybe, it's cortisol or whatever it is that's creating this negative thought. And now we're feeling the thought. So let me give you an example. I have a sad thought. So now I have a sad thought. There's been a connection made as a sad thought. Now my body is starting to feel sad. Oh, I'm feeling so sad. Oh, I'm really sad today. And that's okay. But then we're thinking about how sad we're feeling. And guess what that's generating? More thinking about how sad we are. And then we're generating another thought about how sad we are. And now we're feeling even more sad. And then we're back to thinking sad. And this is the looping that happens. And this is where a lot of interventions come in, medication being one of them, to stop how we feel. Because it deals with the chemical imbalance around the feeling part, and then we start to feel better. And there's a lot of, meditation helps with that, breath work certainly helps with that, and that's great because it gets the looping cut. But one of the most effective ways to really cut this loop and to forever cut it is to deal with the thinking that generated it and get that thought completely out of our out of our unconscious mind so we don't actually generate those thoughts any longer. But where are these thoughts stored in the body is if we have these thoughts for a long period of time, they will get stored as energy in our body. And, you know, we all have chakras. So the root chakra is typically around our survival. So if we're feeling a lot of powerlessness, not being safe, it's going to affect us in the root chakra. In the sacral chakra, it has a lot to do with both guilt, shame, regret. So if we're feeling a lot of those emotions, having a lot of those thoughts about something that may or may not have happened, then we're going to feel that energy stored and it's going to show up in that chakra. And then our solar plexus has to do with our worthiness, our self-worth, our self-esteem. And if that's our core belief that we're not worthy, we aren't full of self-esteem, then that chakra is going to light up and all the problematic issues will show up around that. And my piece of advice, I just want to leave you with one thing. The direction of your life is going according to your most strongest thoughts. So just think about that. And if you don't like the direction of your life, then that's great awareness. Yahoo, that's wonderful. Then we can just change that and make the thoughts more in line to your true destiny and your magnificence.
Yeah.
Just to Karen, what's the difference between, I guess, NLP or a psychiatrist or a therapist? What would be the difference between those?
That's a really good question. So I'm a neurolinguistic practitioner or NLP practitioner, so I practice neurolinguistics. And there's other talk therapies, which would be like psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. So the best way I explain this is that the other practitioners, the talk therapy practitioners, really deal with why, and they focus their attention on why are you the way you are, or you're struggling with the problem you're struggling, and help you understand why it's there, and then help develop some strategies for you to move past that. In my level of practice, I am not concerned with why. I am, to a very small degree, to get context. I am more concerned on how. You can understand that. How you do your problem, how you do, what thoughts are there, how do you show up, what's your behavior, so we can change the how. So what I like to say is that my level of therapy is content less. We don't really care that much about content and the history and what all went down there. I'm very concerned in context and how you show up so we can change that and move you forward. So that's the difference between the talk therapy and my therapy.